Have you ever wondered what it takes to leave a steady W-2 job and launch your own real estate company? Well, today's guest left her corporate career in the design industry to follow her passion and create something truly unique. She's now the founder of a luxury hospitality development and management company dedicated to crafting one-of-a-kind spaces and unforgettable experiences for travelers with a love of design. In this episode, she shares her journey from the corporate grind to full-time entrepreneurship, blending her creative expertise with bold business moves to redefine what luxury real estate can be. Get ready to be inspired and learn how she's building wealth while transforming the way we experience travel and design. This is the Real Estate Rookie Podcast. I'm Ashley Kerr, and I'm here with Tony J. Robinson.
And welcome to the podcast where every week, 3 times a week, we bring you the inspiration, motivation, and stories you need to hear to kickstart your investing journey. And we are so excited to be joined by Melissa Shelton on the podcast today, the founder of Dear Valentine, a company that, again, focuses on helping investors plan, launch, and manage their property. So Melissa, thank you so much for being with us here today.
Wow. Thank you guys so much. I am very excited to be here. This has been an aspiration for me for a few years since I first came into the real estate journey. I listened to the Rookie Show, and then I officially set it as a goal this year, and it's happening. So thank you so much.
Well, we are just as excited to have you as a guest today and to learn about your journey. So let's start off with the beginning. What was your introduction to real estate?
The first time my husband and I bought a property was in the fall of 2020. And I had always been interested in real estate. I actually went to school for interior design because I had a passion for flipping houses and remodeling houses. And I wanted to learn a little bit more about that business, and I was really interested in design. So I got my degree in interior design, but then graduated in the middle of the recession. So never actually fresh out of school, never really started in the career that I thought I was going to be doing, which is what I thought I was going to school for. And then I ended up going into a sales role for many years. And in 2020, when a lot of us were sitting at home, scrolling through our phones, trying to figure out where the world was going to take us next, I had my eyes set on a property that was not moving. It had been on the market all through COVID, and they dropped the price. It went under contract, and then it was released from the contract, and then they put it back on the market for a little less than it was originally listed. And I told my husband, this is the one. We have to do it. It's such a good price. The mortgage rates are great. And so we bought it sight unseen. And then, of course, we were able to get down to that city and see it in person and, within the inspection period. But that was kind of our entry into it. And then I started listening to BiggerPockets, and the bug just bit me from there forward.
So what was that first inspiration that you decided to really get into real estate? And did you already know exactly what your strategy was going to be and where you wanted to go with this?
Back in 2013, kind of the earlier days of Airbnb, I had a very small apartment in New York that was on a popular street in Williamsburg. For any of those who know Brooklyn, Williamsburg was really hopping. And so I started traveling a lot for work. I was working for a company that had me gone probably about 50% of the time. And so I started Airbnb-ing my apartment to bring in some extra income. And then I started living with my boyfriend. We got serious and started living together, but I kept my apartment and pretty much was Airbnb-ing it full time. So that really inspired me to be a host because I loved that. So, and these were the early days of Airbnb where, you would leave handwritten notes for all of your guests and like bottles of wine. And, your guests would be coming from Australia and you'd give them this whole spiel and you'd meet them. And it was just a very personal hospitality experience. And I come from the service industry. I worked in a restaurant all through college, some of high school, so some of design school. So for 12 years, my job, the way I made money was hosting people, was serving them and taking care of them and making sure they had a good time. So it's in my blood. And when I saw that I could do that on a small scale as an Airbnb host, I just really couldn't get enough of it. But New York banned Airbnb. I had to stop doing that with my apartment. And I basically took a pause until around 2020, 2021, when we bought this investment property and then we restarted in the hosting world.
Melissa, when you first started your real estate journey, was it your intent to quit your W-2 job? And did you think you'd be going into full-time entrepreneurship outside of real estate, of just having this company too, not just as a full-time investor?
I think your question is like, did I know all along that this company that I was going to build was going to allow me to quit my job? But the answer to your question is actually like, yes, of course, I've always wanted to quit my W-2 job. From the day I first worked a job in retail when I was 17 years old, I didn't want to do that. So no, I wasn't building this only so that it could become my financial independence and it could get me out of my W-2 job, because I did love the work I did. I was very well compensated. I had a really great team. I had built a reputation for myself in my industry that, as being, a female leader, was something that I was having a really hard time letting go of, because I felt like I had fought my way to the top of the corporate ladder, and to just give it all up is, something that I looked in the mirror and said, are you stupid? Why would you walk away from this senior role that you have? Why would you walk away from this big paycheck? And so, yeah, in a way, I wanted to create something that I enjoyed enough that it would give me the why to finally say goodbye to my previous self, which was so closely identified with my corporate career.
Yeah, you hit on something, Melissa, that I just want to drill down on a little bit. Like that last sentence of you identified in a certain way as a W-2 employee. And just think about when you meet someone new, you usually ask them, oh, well, what do you do? And what's our typical response is what we do for work, right? It's like, what is our profession, right? And I think so much of our psyche is tied up in what we do for our day jobs. I even today sometimes still, and it's a thought that passes quickly. But even for me, sometimes I have this thought of well, man, am I missing something by not climbing a corporate ladder anymore? Because I'd done it in the W-2 space and I did it well. I climbed the ladder quickly. And I sometimes, even today, as a successful entrepreneur, still feel like I might be missing out on something. It's this really weird dynamic, because I love working for myself. I don't ever have a desire to go back for a W-2 job, but at the same time, we're so conditioned as people, as adults, to climb a ladder that when you're not doing it, you feel that you're almost doing something wrong.
I believe, and I've had to evaluate this a lot, because it took me a long time to get up the strength and courage to leave a really good career. Everyone in my role retired in my role. So the fact that I was leaving while still young, while at the top, was something that, again, I looked in the mirror saying, are you stupid? Why would you do this? You might fail. You might not make money with this next venture. So I believe personally that my issues and concerns about no longer climbing the corporate ladder are tied to my desire to please people, my desire to be validated, my desire to check a box of accomplishment, because I'm an ambitious person. So when you work in a career, you have let's call it the ladder, but it's the trajectory of various positions and the trajectory of increasing compensation. And those accolades and rewards that you get are depositing in your confidence bank every single day, if you're getting them, right? Which, as ambitious people, we're going to fight until we get it. So when you now step out and you become an entrepreneur, you have to set up your own new goal system. What are the milestones that you're going to set up for yourself as an entrepreneur, as a female leader, as a designer, whatever your path is? Write that path down as if it's a structured HR trajectory for a new company that you're going to work for. If you're a person who feels like you need that validation, which I am that kind of person. I know I am after many years of working in the corporate world. So then you can pat yourself on the back. You can put an employee of the year sign on your wall because you accomplished that in your own company, if that makes you feel better. But I think those little things do matter to some people like me.
Rookies, we want to hit 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, and we need your help. While we take a quick ad break, you can go on over to youtube.com/@realestaterookie and make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Stay tuned after a break for more from Melissa.
All right, welcome back to the show. We are joined by Melissa Shelton.
Melissa, outside of the mindset piece, what are some other actionable things you did to make sure that you felt secure and confident enough to go out and build your own company? Did you have some kind of financial foundation, an amount of reserves? What are some of those other things that somebody listening could say, like, okay, here's things I need to think about before I actually decide to quit my job and take this leap into entrepreneurship?
Right. So first and foremost, yes, if you have reserves, it will help because you'll feel a little bit of financial security, and you can look at your spending and budgeting and understand how much do I need every month and how long will it take me until I start making money in my new venture to be able to balance that scale. Like I can tap into my reserves for 6 months, or maybe it's just 3 months, or maybe it's just 1 month. But then what happens when you finish that reserve? What's the plan to build up the other thing? So the 2 steps that I took were, number 1, I tried to save. It wasn't very easy because I also, as you can tell, I like nice things. So I would travel a lot and spend a lot. So that was hard. It was hard for me to save. But what I did was I put a plan together for how much money I could make in my new venture if it was structured the way I expected it to be structured, the way I wanted it to be structured. And essentially I broke it down. Okay, if I have one property that's doing an estimated revenue of this much per year with highs and low seasons, I can have this much of a average monthly cash flow. That average monthly cash flow from one property is going to be X. Okay, how many of those properties do I need? And then if I'm not able to get enough properties fast enough, what are other ways that I can supplement my income, whether it's offering consulting or launching a digital product? I mean, all of these things are on my, goal list for things I would like to do for Dear Valentine, but I basically built up a revenue plan to replace my W-2 income.
And I think that's a super important point of not just relying on the cash flow from your portfolio to help you make that transition. I think that's where a lot of folks get stuck, is they feel like it's got to be 100% of the money that I make from my rentals that allows me to step away. But sometimes that transition, it's a blending of different streams of revenue. So for all of our rookies that are listening, ask yourself, are there any additional skills, abilities, things that you have that are maybe somewhat related to the world of real estate investing that you can then go out and do to maybe earn some additional income? We've met people who do, they start design companies. I've met folks who become agents once they leave their W-2 job, people who get into lending. Like, these are things that are maybe somewhat connected to real estate, but they're jobs or side hustles that will allow you to get away from that W-2 and continue to focus on building something for yourself.
I also think it's important to remember that if you're quitting your W-2 job, and we're assuming in this situation it's a full-time job, chances are you have strengths, skills, specialties that you're good at. So maybe you can use one of those strengths or skills or specialties in a consulting role. Maybe you can work part-time. I think really like the biggest hurdle to get over is getting away from your full-time corporate job or W-2 job. Maybe it's not in a corporation, but getting over that hump is step 1. You could still work part-time if you still need to. Maybe that's part of your revenue plan. Maybe part of your income is supplemented by part-time consulting or part-time marketing if you're a marketing person. I would just say go back and look through what you've been doing the last 2, 5, 10 years. And clearly that's something you're good at if you've stayed employed. And how can you leverage that skill set to be part of your revenue plan? You don't have to completely start over. Your pivot doesn't have to be 180 degrees. It can just be a 20-degree pivot, 20 degrees away from working for somebody else full-time and putting your dreams on hold.
I want to go back, Melissa, to that moment, though, when you actually made the decision to say, I'm going to do this full-time. And what was it that happened leading up to that point to make you finally comfortable and confident to say that? Was it that you had the plan and you had kind of mapped everything out and it made sense? Was there something else? But how did you actually get to the point where you said, today is the day?
Well, the truth is I wanted for a long time to build something that was my own. And there wasn't really like a moment that I had the courage to just do it, to walk away. And I think that just kept me in these roles for longer and longer. And I was building something and I was growing something, and I felt the reward of the building and growing I was doing in the corporate ladder. And then I got pregnant which I worked very hard for. It wasn't like on accident. My husband and I worked for many years to get pregnant. And then once I got pregnant, it was almost like, okay, we've achieved a milestone. What are we going to do once we cross this bridge, right? So once we have our baby, then things are going to be different. And am I going to go back to work in the previous role that I've been in for all of these years, which required me to go international, travel international 6 times a year and be, on the road all the time. So having a baby really put that in perspective for me. And I guess you could say it was the why that had me tell myself that it was finally time. And then, of course, I had to start working really hard on the plan because I knew that it was something that I wanted to do not long after the baby was born. And so for that reason, I basically approached it like I do any big project. I just put together a plan, a timeline. What are the things that need to happen to make this happen for us? What needs to happen with my husband's income? What needs to happen with my income? What do we need to cut? We sat down and talked about cutting subscriptions, cutting manicures, cutting the, once a month massage or whatever it was that we were spending money on. Cause at the end of the month, you would add it up and you'd be like, wow, how did we spend all of this money on Uber Eats, for example? Okay, maybe when I quit my job, we'll just agree to not go out to eat for a few months or only once a week or only once a month. And were these sacrifices things that I was willing to sacrifice to be able to spend more time with my kid, to build a company that was going to be a legacy for him? Yes, the answer was yes. I could survive without a manicure or, a delivery burrito if I needed to.
Now, for our rookies that are listening, I know we're talking a lot about that transition, which is maybe a little premature for the people that are listening, but I think the important part of what Melissa's sharing is that you've got to build a plan to be able to get to that point. And if you're just kind of flying by the seat of your pants, then maybe you never actually get there. But if you sit down and you map it out, there's a tremendous amount of value in doing that. I just quickly want to share too, I asked you, Melissa, hey, what was that moment when you knew? And you said it wasn't really a moment. It kind of happened over time. For me, it was a specific moment. And I lost my job on December 23rd, 2020. I'll never forget that moment. And it wasn't at that moment that I decided that I wasn't going back, but it was after I had applied to a few other jobs that I was very, very much qualified for, and I didn't get them. And the last one, it was a company that I worked for previously, and I'd gone on and done a lot more since that job and had gained a lot more experience. And I applied for a role that was relevant to the experience that I had gained. And hey, Tony, we're so happy to hear from you. Unfortunately, we don't think you're a good fit for that role, but we can give you the role that you had when you left, which would have been a major pay decrease, a decrease in scale, decrease in everything. And I sat down and I was like, what am I even doing here? Why am I focusing on letting someone else dictate the value that I'm able to provide in the marketplace? Let me go try and do it for myself. And it was that moment. I'll never forget when I got that email. I was like, I'm not going back. I was like, let me give myself some time to do that. So that was a moment for me. Ashley, what was it for you? What was that moment when you said, I don't think I want to work for anyone else?
Well, first, I want to kind of piggyback off your experience, because being an entrepreneur comes with its own challenges. And sometimes you feel like you're working 24/7 and you have to deal with the difficult tenants, difficult guests, whatever. But I don't know if you told this story or your wife, Sarah, told this story, but I think it was her. And she said how there was just this irate guest that was treating her so bad and she was so upset about it. And she came to you and you said something like, it's our house, tell them to leave. We'll be done with it. Tell her to leave. Tell her to get out of our house. You can do that. It's our house. And that right there was just such a big thing to me, as to even though there's difficult guests, difficult tenants, a long-term tenant's a lot difficult to just say, hey, leave my house. But ultimately, it's your decision how you want to handle it. It's not going to, working for someone else, if you make that decision and it's not what they wanted, then, obviously that impacts you, that impacts how you grow, climb the corporate ladder, whatever that is, and puts that pressure on you. But I always think about that when I have difficult situations with people. And I really think that is such a valuable lesson too. And I think for my experience as to kind of when that moment was I I can't think of a specific time, but I just think of the phone calls and the time and how my kids would be there and I would be trying to balance working for someone else and not being able to focus on them. And it comes back to that responsibility. I had that responsibility to the person I was working for to take their phone calls, to take care of the business that needed to be done because it wasn't me losing money. It was them losing money if I didn't do it. Now, if I decide to put something off a day and I'm losing $1,000 because of it, that's my decision and that's impacting me financially and not someone else. And I think that was like realizing that shift as I was building my rental portfolios, realizing I don't have to do that for my own properties. I can make that decision that this moment with my kids is more important than that financial gain. Where if you're responsible to someone else, it's, unless you're not a great employee, it's hard to make that decision of like, you know what, sorry, boss, you're going to lose $1,000 today. So that was a big realization for me, that part of it.
Yeah. And for me, it was many examples of that over several years. And I mentioned earlier that we worked really hard to get pregnant. My husband and I did an IVF journey that was a little over 2 years long. And if you've ever done IVF, you know that scheduling is really tough, that you have to be at a clinic at a certain time on a certain day. And we did several rounds. And every time I was trying to accomplish a successful round, my work needed me. I was going to be in New York or I was going to be in Europe. And I was calling the clinic saying, can we postpone this? Can we change the date? And I remember bawling, crying because we had to reschedule one of the IVF transfers because I needed to be out of town for work. And I just couldn't do it after that. I knew that this was going to be a problem and that my child was going to always come first, but it started when we were trying to get pregnant. So I just knew by the time the baby does arrive, then it's going to, just be even more important that I am able to control my own schedule.
Okay. So once you decided to pursue your company full time and you've made that transition, what does your day look like now? What are you doing on a daily, monthly basis running your own company?
It's chaos. Okay. So we just launched our company in May. I resigned from my W-2 job in May. So we've only been in operations full time with Dear Valentine for a little over 5 or 6 months. And I am extremely hands-on because I own the company and I operate the company, and I want to make sure that I know exactly how every one of our processes is going to go so that I can create our standard processes and then eventually delegate them to the right person. So right now I'm very involved in everything. My standard day is waking up, spending a little time with my son in the morning, and then I hop in the car and I do site visits. We have several properties under construction that we're restoring and renovating to be these hospitality experiences, these design-driven rental homes. So I go and visit those. I review contractor work. I do markups on plans. And the less glamorous part, I deliver supplies to properties that need more toilet paper, for example, because right now I'm wearing every hat and I love that. But eventually we will hire more people on our team and I'll delegate some of that. But this, like I said, this part has been really important for me to figure out our processes.
All right, guys, we have to take one final ad break, but we'll be right back after this.
Okay, let's jump back into the show.
So, Melissa, I guess maybe give us a little bit of overview of like how you're actually, like what the actual model here is. So it sounds like you're finding kind of older historic homes, you're renovating those and then turning those into kind of like more luxury upscale short-term rental, maybe midterm rental stays. So now that you're doing this full time, are you funding these purchases of the properties yourself? Or how are you, I feel like that's the question for everyone. It's like, how do I buy real estate after I no longer have a W-2 job? So what have you done to kind of solve for that challenge?
Yeah, no, thank you for asking this question because I think transparency is important. And I think our demographic, like our age group is always like, how does he afford that? Or how does she afford that, right?
The Home Alone house. The big question, what did the parents do?
Yeah, exactly. So basically, what we did was we were able to acquire one property with self funding with our own money. And then we knew that we weren't going to be able to buy several more properties. And so I had to kind of sit down and understand, well, what can I bring to the table and what do I need brought to the table? I can bring my business acumen. I'm really good at marketing, great at design, great at hospitality operations. The joy of hosting is running through my blood. So I can put all of that on the table, but I don't have the finances at the moment because I left my job. So I'm actually not someone who's a good candidate for a big loan right now. But we also use some of our reserves to buy the other property, and we're living off of my reserves. So I need someone else to come to the table with money. So basically what I did was I started talking to people, sharing about Dear Valentine, sharing about the vision of it and what we wanted to do. And people started coming out of the woodworks. And another investor who had a property who he had not decided what he was going to do with it yet. It was a historic property. He heard about what I was doing and my vision. And he said, hey, why don't you do that with my property? So that was a partnership that just kind of formed organically when he had a property that he needed to renovate and design and needed somebody to operate it and manage it. And I had the skills to do all of that. So that union was made there. And then that snowballed into other investors in similar situations where they had the capital, they had the desire to have these type of properties and this type of revenue, but they don't want to do the day to day. They don't want to design it. They need to outsource all of that. So Dear Valentine comes on board, and we basically take over. Once they acquire the property, we take over all of the renovation, design, getting it set up, furnishing it, building all the systems for how the guests are going to, experience the space, launching the website, everything that goes into operating it, we take over and do that.
Melissa, is this set up as your equity partner, or is this a management fee, or how is this structured, this partnership with these investors?
So it's two-part fee structure. The first part is a services fee that we do for the investor or property owner based on the services of getting it started, doing the design work, launching it, ordering all the products. And then once the property goes into operation, we switch to a commission management fee. So we take a percentage of all gross revenue that comes through the property from rentals or events.
And then what if somebody else wanted to do this? What are some of the first steps to get into kind of creating a similar company, even if it was just a small piece of this? What are things they need to do before they actually go out and get their first investor?
So again, I think look at your strengths and what you're good at and write those down and, narrow it down to just a couple things, right? Because if you have you might be good at a million things, but if you're trying to appeal to someone, you kind of want to target their need. What is the problem that you can solve for them? So if you are great at design, then really play up the design element. Build a deck in Canva. Canva is free, Canva, for those of you who don't know it. It's very easy to use. You can get a free account. You can download templates and build a design deck or a deck about you and just talk about everything you're good at and then start shopping that around to your network. And I firmly believe you don't get what you don't ask for. So ask for business. Ask for someone to take a chance on you. Tell them what you want to do and what you're interested in and see if they would be interested in partnering with you.
For my short-term rentals, I managed it and ran our first one that we had for several years. And kind of between me and my partner, we do odd things, but it was poorly mismanaged because it was literally just a hobby for us compared to the other things we were doing. But we eventually reached out to our one friend that was an investor. She had just bought her first out-of-state rental. She wanted to learn more. She had a full-time W-2 job. And we actually hired her for a great rate because she was new to it. And we paid her like a one-time fee to learn everything. We said, we're going to give you this amount of money up front. You're going to learn everything, what software we need, everything like that. And we want you to actually set up the systems for us. And she's still, I think it's been almost 3 years that she's been managing our properties, and she takes a percentage of it. And she's actually gone on and works for another company now with an even larger portfolio, but she still charges us that lower rate as, and, like, I don't know if it's because we helped her get into that, that kind of element, that realm of things, but it was such a beneficial thing for us as to finding somebody who was motivated, energetic, wanted to get into this, and like taking a chance on somebody new that was just learning. And it's worked out tremendously well for us and for her too.
Absolutely. I mean, get your foot in the door and just don't sign a contract that's more than maybe a year long. So if you need to raise your prices, you have that ability. But yeah, absolutely get your foot in the door. And that was with us. Of course, I wanted equity on that first property that I partnered on. And I actually asked for it when I put my proposal in for them to hire Dear Valentine. I put in an equity proposal that had a lower management fee and almost no startup fee in terms of all of the design services and things like that. But that partner was not interested in giving any equity in the property. So then I, reworked that proposal and said, okay, well, then I have to consider the risk here. I could design this beautiful property for you. You own the property. You could hire me for a year to be the manager. I could do all of this work to build up the reputation for this property. And then you could let me go as the manager and you would be, quote unquote, sitting pretty with this nice property that I put all this work into. So yes, of course I want equity, but in a situation like that, how could I then protect myself to be able to still have benefits from the property long term? And in this situation, I said, this is my foot in the door. This is my portfolio builder. I don't have the opportunity or I don't have the ability to play hardball right now. I need to prove that I can do this. I need a proof of concept. So I made a deal on that one that was very good for both of us because I got to bring in a partner as my first partner and show future partners what I could do by doing it well on this one. And he got a good deal because he got me at, my company at a low rate and at a discounted price. And he didn't have to give up any equity in the property.
Tony, I think you kind of had a similar start to partnering with people for your short-term rentals.
Yeah, the very first one that we did, all the things that you brought to the table, Melissa, are the same things that we brought. But much like you, again, I just lost my job. It wasn't super bankable. All the money that we had saved up was like money to live off of. So we had a partner approach us potentially. And the way that we structured that very first partnership, we put up a little bit of the capital. We put up 25% of the capital that was needed for down payment, closing costs, and setup. The partner brought 75% and they carried the mortgage on that property. So we kept 25% equity that matched the capital that we contributed to the deal. They kept 75% equity, but then we also charged a 15% management fee to the property as well. So we get the capital that matches our contribution, but then we get the management fee for the day to day. And it's since evolved, from there. Now, typically we don't charge management fees and we just kind of split the equity on these different partnerships. But I agree with you on that first one. You don't really have proof of concept yet, and you've got to find a way to build that up so that the future deals become a little bit easier for you.
Yeah, and just for those of you out there that are listening, because I remember before we really got into this full time, I would hear podcast episodes and just really wonder, okay, but how did you find that partner to buy that property with? Or how did you find that right property to go in on with a partner? So if you are really starting from square one and you don't have the equity to buy a property or partner on a property, you can find other Airbnb hosts who maybe are underperforming. And like, if you're really interested in design or management, if that's the service that you want to get into, you could go through Airbnb in your neighborhood or in your community or wherever you want to target and look for underperforming Airbnbs. And then you can send those people your pitch deck, your proposal, and say, I've run the numbers. I think you could be doing this. This is a competitive property down the street that's doing X. And I feel like you could get there with these 3 changes, and I would be willing to do those for you at a discounted rate if you take a chance on me. I'm a new management company, or whatever your proposal is to them. So I think there are ways to get in. I think it's hard to find the perfect property with the perfect investor who's, looking at equity share and looking for a partner. Like, these are unicorn deals. And I know Tony has made it seem easy because he does so many good ones, but I found it to be really hard. So I think if you are also in that position, if you're listening and you're like, well, where do I even begin? just shop around on Airbnb or long-term rentals, like underperforming long-term rentals, whatever it is you're into, just target that, kind of bottom under the line and see if there's anyone who's interested in partnering with you so that you can take over and make their business more successful, which in the end will make them more money too.
Yeah, two quick, just like tactical things that rookies can do to help go down that path. Number one, and I'm thinking specifically on the short-term side, but number one is find listings in whatever market you're focused on that have poor review scores. If every single listing on Airbnb has publicly showing reviews. And if you find anything that's below like a 4.6, that's a struggling listing. And you can skip trace that owner, right? And you can there's different tools you can use, like scrape address off Airbnb, but use one of those tools, get the address, email the owner, right? Call the owner, text the owner, send a mail piece to the owner. So that's one piece, is just using Airbnb and property support reviews. The second thing, and we haven't done this, but I know other investors who have done this to great success, is they'll find properties that are currently listed for rent, like as a traditional long-term rental, and then they'll approach those landlords and say, hey, you currently have this listed at $2,000 a month as a traditional long-term rental. I can get you on average $6,000 per month as a short-term rental, and go with that proposal. And I have two friends who have built a property management company here in SoCal focusing on luxury, kind of almost oceanfront properties that were previously listed for rent, that they just were able to convince the owner to turn them into short-term rentals instead. So two tactical things that people can do as they're looking to get started. So Melissa, going back to you, if you, again, our rookie, our audience are mostly consisting of rookies, people who are either just getting started, maybe have one or two deals. But not everyone wants to build a massive portfolio, right? Some people want to be able to walk away from their day job with a small but mighty portfolio. So what is your advice to the people who maybe don't want to build this massive portfolio, but still want the ability to, at some point, achieve financial independence?
Well, I also don't want to build a massive portfolio. I have to remind myself every day that I don't have to be the biggest and the best, because I'm so used to having that like ambitious drive that I'm kind of like just naturally hungry. And then I'm like, whoa, you quit your job to relax more, not to work more. So I have to remind myself that too. Okay. So advice to people who want to stay nimble, but also want to achieve financial freedom. Find properties that are going to give you high returns, or get yourself involved in deals that are going to give you high returns, and also be smart about your outsourcing and who you hire. Think about what the overhead costs are going to be, because overhead costs are like balls and chains that will make you have to work more. They'll make you have to bring in more revenue. So stay nimble as much as you can. And one thing that I have to tell myself is don't over offer, right? So like when you start a property, I want to offer massage. I want to offer private chef. I want to offer, concierge service. There's all these things I want to offer. And then I look around and I say, oh, wait, I have to build all of that because I'm, the only person in my company. I don't have a marketing team. I don't have like a programming team. I don't have a tech team. So if you make your idea too big or your service offering too big, you'll be drowned in too much work and too much overhead if you're trying to outsource all of that. And then you'll have to build a bigger portfolio in order to support the cost of your business. So stay small, stay nimble, try to do everything yourself. And then when you do start outsourcing, look at ways that you can bring in green help, like maybe interns, design school students, or, local service industry people who want to get into hospitality. Just be smart about your hiring, because when you bring on employees, that can also become very expensive.
Yeah, I really like the piece about your overhead. I every month I'm going through all the credit cards for all the companies, and then I just do a brief overview of any recurring charges that are happening as to like, okay, do we really need all of this software and these subscriptions and things like that? Especially the ones that we forget to cancel or something because we're going to try it out for 6 months, things like that. But those little things like add up to so much. And do you really need all of them? Or is Google Sheets going to work just as good to do that one simple thing? So I love that piece of the advice. But Melissa, we're going to wrap up here. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming on today and giving this little mini master class in starting your own business, going into real estate and, not just solely focusing on real estate, but developing another branch, another arm to the real estate realm. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashley.
Before we go, if you want to learn more about Melissa or reach out to her, Melissa, where can they find you?
So on Instagram, we're dearvalentine.co. That is also our website address, dearvalentine.co. And you can find me on Instagram at Melshel, Melshel. And my website for consulting and other services is melshel.com.
I'm Ashley and he's Tony. Thank you so much for listening. This has been an episode of Real Estate Rookie, and we'll see you guys next time.